In a galaxy teeming with countless civilizations, each more advanced and imposing than the last, humanity held a modest position. The Intergalactic Council, an awe-inspiring assembly that spanned across light years, was the galaxy's ultimate governing authority, a beacon of order, or so it claimed. Its towering halls gleamed with polished metals and opalescent lights, a masterpiece of alien architecture and power. Within these walls sat representatives from dominant species, their forms tall, regal, and radiating an aura of strength. And then, there were the humans. Small in number, their voice a mere murmur drowned in a cacophony of louder, more ancient presences. The Council regarded humanity as primitive, a species that had only recently mastered interstellar travel. To them, humans were an anomaly, strange, unpredictable, and unsophisticated. Words like fragile and inexperienced were spoken in clipped, dismissive tones whenever humanity's interests were discussed. Humanity's requests, concerns, and grievances were often brushed aside, barely worthy of attention. They were a young species, after all. And what could such a young species understand about the centuries of laws, traditions, and hierarchies that governed the galaxy? Over the years, humans had tried to abide by the Council's decisions, even when those decisions seemed unjust or arbitrary. Trade restrictions, travel bans, and resource quotas were levied against Earth and its colonies with increasing frequency. If a human mining colony on a remote planet discovered a rare mineral, the Council would declare it a protected resource, forcibly seizing control. Human colonies were sometimes displaced, entire communities uprooted, and there was nothing they could do but comply. Resistance was futile. Defiance meant sanctions, or worse, military intervention. The dominant species, the Lithorians with their crystalline forms and piercing voices, the Tharkans with scales like armor, and the Varelians, whose telepathic abilities made them the Council's enforcers, held the real power. Humanity watched as these species made grand decisions that shaped lives, while their own voices barely registered. Earth was treated as a backwater, its people tolerated but not respected, permitted only because they obeyed. Yet, quietly, a tension was building. Each unjust embargo tightened the noose, and each forced displacement stoked resentment. Humans across the colonies shared whispers, a simmering frustration spreading through their ranks like an ember in dry grass. They were learning the unspoken rules of the galaxy, that power, not justice, ruled. But they were also learning something else, something dangerous: how to adapt, how to endure, how to mask their growing resentment under a calm exterior. Meanwhile, the Council continued to overlook humanity's potential. They mistook compliance for weakness, patience for acceptance. Humans had yet to reveal the steel beneath their skin, the resolve that lay dormant, waiting. And so, the Council pushed harder, unaware that each policy, each callous dismissal, was forging a quiet but formidable resolve among the humans. In the heart of the vast alien metropolises, where Council members basked in their authority and looked down upon Earth as a curiosity, they failed to see the storm gathering just beyond their gaze. For them, humans would always be lesser, never worth true concern. They didn't notice the moments in crowded markets when human traders exchanged knowing looks, or the way human scientists worked tirelessly in hidden outposts, preparing for a future they alone seemed to see. The Council Hall stood tall, a testament to ages of rule, filled with voices that dismissed and diminished the newcomers to their galactic society. But they couldn't see, that these new players weren't as malleable as they appeared. The Spark was a small colony, nestled on the edges of explored space, a place called Haven's Reach. It was an unassuming settlement, home to a few hundred humans, known more for its breathtaking skies and modest mineral deposits than for any strategic importance. Its people were farmers, scientists, engineers, families working to carve out lives far from the galaxy's bustle. They kept to themselves, loyal to Council laws, paying their dues and filing their reports, as expected. Then came the order. A Council edict, issued with the cold efficiency of a machine, declared Haven's Reach an unauthorized outpost. Without warning, a task force arrived to neutralize the so-called threat to galactic security. The sky turned dark with the shadows of Council warships, and Haven's Reach, with its fields and homes, became a target. The bombardment began without mercy. Entire families were lost in the opening minutes, buildings crumbling into ashes, communications cut off before they could plead for reason. Those who survived the initial attack scrambled to hide, only to be tracked down by council soldiers enforcing the brutal mandate. The air filled with the acrid stench of burning fields and the haunting cries of survivors who searched through rubble for loved ones, only to find empty cradles, shattered homes, lives erased in seconds. Among the few who made it out was a young engineer named Aaron, whose wife and daughter were lost in the chaos. Bleeding and dazed, he found himself among a small group of survivors, neighbors, friends, people he'd shared meals and stories with, each haunted by the same hollow eyes. They escaped in a rusted shuttle, witnessing the fires of Haven's Reach fade in the distance, leaving behind everything they had ever known. Word of Haven's Reach spread like wildfire. The loss was more than a tragedy. It was a scar seared across humanity's heart. Across Earth, on Mars, and in distant colonies, news of the massacre sparked a collective fury that had been building for years. It wasn't just about Haven's Reach. It was about every colony pushed to its breaking point, every family upturned, every dream stolen by the unfeeling hand of the Council. Grief turned to rage, and rage into purpose, binding humanity with a fierce unity they hadn't felt since their earliest days among the stars. Messages from survivors circulated in hidden networks, videos of burning fields, of families huddled in the ruins, and the Council soldiers leaving without a hint of remorse. Children, parents, soldiers, every human who saw these images felt something ignite deep within. The Council had crossed a line, and for the first time, humanity's response was unanimous. Enough was enough. In backrooms and dimly lit gathering places, humans whispered words of rebellion. Friends exchanged nods, strangers shared knowing looks, and alliances grew in silence. Humanity was not alone in its sorrow. Among the alien races there were those who had grown disillusioned with the Council's unchecked power, those who knew what it meant to suffer under a ruling hand that saw them as disposable. A few Lithorians, their crystalline bodies shimmering, offered quiet condolences. Some Varelians sent anonymous messages of support. But these allies dared not speak openly. They watched as humanity began to change, and in secret, they waited to see if perhaps there was hope for their own future in the humans' rising defiance. Aaron and other survivors became symbols of resistance. In them, humanity saw the embodiment of their shared grief and determination. Aaron spoke to crowded rooms of humans, his voice steady and cold, recounting the last moments of Haven's Reach. He didn't call for vengeance but something far deeper, a demand for respect, for their right to exist without oppression. The weight of their loss was carried with them, etched into the faces of every survivor, and it became a beacon, a rallying call for humans everywhere. The Council's edict had sought to silence a small colony, but instead, it awoke something the galaxy had never seen before. Aaron's message spread from planet to planet, system to system. His words weren't flowery or grand, they were raw, stripped down to a truth everyone understood. They took our homes, our families, he said, voice hoarse with grief. They think we'll fall in line, that we'll back down. But they don't know us. His face, bruised and solemn, was the face of every human who had felt the Council's boot, and his message struck a nerve. Within hours, recordings of his speech traveled through encrypted networks, slipping past Council surveillance. Humans across the galaxy heard the call and felt their anger sharpen into something dangerous: resolve. Leaders from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies convened in secret meetings, a rare alliance of politicians, scientists, and military minds putting aside their differences. The message was clear: survival depended on unity. Representatives from each colony shared what they could bring to the table. Some offered military forces, modest but fierce. Others had tech specialists, engineers who could adapt old ships and systems, turning civilian crafts into armed vessels. Resources were pooled from hidden stashes, while volunteers came forward, offering their skills, their ships, their lives. What humanity lacked in sheer power, they made up for with ingenuity. Their tactics took shape in crowded, dimly lit rooms where people leaned over hand-drawn maps and holographic projections. Old freighters were reinforced with scavenged armor, their engines modified for speed and stealth. Weapons, forbidden by council decree, were cobbled together from mining tools and repurposed machinery. Scientists worked day and night, developing new ways to disrupt enemy communications and counter council weaponry. Engineers with barely enough funding to keep the lights on devised tech that far exceeded anything the council expected. More than a few alien species noticed humanity's growing rebellion. The Vitari, small and nimble beings often treated as second-class citizens, began supplying humans with crucial intel from within council headquarters. The Mulans, known for their expertise in cloaking technology, sent schematics that would make human ships nearly invisible. And the Iskalians, tall and elegant but historically sidelined, quietly reached out, offering to stand beside humanity in the coming storm. Together, these unlikely allies formed the first whispers of an underground network, all with one shared purpose: freedom from the Council's oppressive rule. In makeshift command centers scattered across the galaxy, people from every walk of life joined the cause. Earth's officials sat side by side with miners from asteroid outposts, scientists debated strategy with ex-military captains, and civilian volunteers offered support roles from logistics to medical care. Soldiers trained alongside farmers, teachers, and merchants, their shared resolve uniting them. Some cracked jokes, the laughter carrying a hint of defiance. Others worked in silence, focused on the task ahead. The galaxy had given them no choice but to be resourceful, and now that trait would become their greatest weapon. Amidst the preparations, there was a sense of purpose, of knowing that for once, they were fighting for something that truly mattered. Aaron's words echoed through their minds as they readied themselves. They think they're invincible. But they've never met anyone like us. The strike began in silence. Human ships, patched together from scrap and old freighters, crept through the dark expanse, cloaked in the Mulan's technology, invisible to the Council's scanners. Their target was a heavily guarded Council outpost known as Port Zoltran, a fortress-like hub that controlled supply routes to a dozen core systems. It was a symbol of the Council's unchallenged power and a critical nerve center. But to humanity, it was an opportunity, a chance to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. As human ships drew near, they launched decoys, small drones that mimicked the signal of incoming meteors, something the outpost's defense systems would ignore. When the ships slipped past the initial security grid, the real attack began. Explosive charges burst against the outpost's shields in precise, coordinated strikes, shocking the defenders who had never faced an enemy bold enough to target them at home. The shields flickered, and for the first time, cracks appeared in the Council's seemingly impenetrable defenses. Council forces scrambled to respond, underestimating the strength and precision of the assault. Human vessels, fast and unpredictable, swarmed in, avoiding direct confrontation with larger Council warships. They maneuvered with agility, targeting weak points in the outpost's infrastructure, exploiting years of alien complacency. Engines sputtered as Council ships attempted to realign, only to be bombarded by EMP blasts that disabled their systems in seconds. Human hackers infiltrated the station's network, sending false commands to enemy turrets, turning them against their own ships. Amid the chaos, Council commanders realized with horror that their automated defenses were now working against them, directed by human hands. The aliens' overconfidence shattered as their ships fell one by one. Council soldiers, who had never faced true resistance, now fought enemies who moved with determination and precision, refusing to yield an inch. The human strategies weren't just unpredictable, they were ruthless. Guerrilla-style boarding parties stormed the halls of the outpost, using corridors to their advantage, forcing the enemy into close quarters where human ingenuity thrived. Against well-trained alien soldiers, these fighters fought with every ounce of strength and cunning, wielding makeshift weapons that, while unorthodox, were brutally effective. Council leaders watched the unfolding battle in shock, their arrogance giving way to a creeping realization that they had gravely misjudged humanity. The scenes relayed back to them showed humans advancing through smoke-filled corridors, their faces battered but unyielding, their eyes blazing with defiance. To the Council, humans had always seemed like a curiosity, a minor nuisance. But now, seeing them fight, seeing how they adapted, survived, and attacked with unrelenting force, they began to feel something they hadn't felt in centuries: fear. Human forces pressed on despite casualties, pushing further into the heart of the outpost. Council commanders issued frantic orders, trying to regain control, but their troops faltered, unprepared for the sheer will that drove the human fighters. In the council chambers, officials whispered among themselves, voices laced with disbelief and anxiety as the scope of their failure sank in. Reports of their soldiers' retreat, of defenses overwhelmed, were punctuated by desperate calls for reinforcements. By the time the last council warship had fallen, Port Zoltran was in ruins, its control room seized by human hands. The surviving council forces, scattered and leaderless, fled into the blackness of space, leaving behind their once mighty outpost. Aaron, bloodied and exhausted, stood among his comrades, looking out over the wreckage. They had fought as one, driven not by conquest but by a need to be free, to no longer live as pawns. The galaxy watched, stunned, as word of the impossible victory spread. The galaxy was forever changed in the wake of Port Zoltran. Word of humanity's victory spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of known space. Species that had once dismissed humans as inconsequential now spoke their names in whispers tinged with respect and fear. Rumors of human resilience and cunning tactics circulated among council members, and soon, a new reputation took hold. Humanity was no longer the unassuming newcomer but a force to be reckoned with. In council chambers, the tone shifted. Council representatives from dominant species, the Lithorians, the Tharkans, and even the Varelians, gathered in anxious discussion, their voices subdued. For the first time, they had to question their assumptions. Reports detailing humanity's resourcefulness and their ability to turn the Council's own technology against them revealed a level of adaptability that made the galaxy's most powerful species uneasy. No one had foreseen the quiet, patient humans rising against such overwhelming odds, much less emerging victorious. And if humanity could achieve this at their current level, who knew what they might be capable of in the years to come? The shift in perception went beyond fear. For the countless smaller species who had endured the Council's oppressive rule, humanity's actions inspired a newfound hope. The Vitari and the Iskalians, among others, spoke openly now of joining humanity's cause, eager to ally with those who had shown the strength to stand up to tyranny. On worlds far from Earth, humans became symbols of defiance. Young aliens who had only heard legends of resistance now looked to humans as real-life examples. Across colonies, holograms and broadcasts showed scenes of humans rebuilding, a quiet strength reflected in their eyes as they worked to restore what they had nearly lost. Aaron, now a symbol of resilience for humanity, was approached by alien diplomats who once wouldn't have given him a second glance. Leaders who had once scoffed at humanity's requests for fair treatment now bowed their heads in acknowledgement, some even seeking alliance, recognizing that it was better to stand with humanity than risk facing them as adversaries. The Council itself, though still powerful, was forced to recognize a new player on the galactic stage. Humanity's voice, once drowned out, now demanded to be heard, and no one dared ignore it. For the humans, there was no triumphalism, no taste for vengeance. They rebuilt with a solemn determination, tending to their wounds, burying their lost, and forging ahead. Their goal had never been to conquer but simply to exist in freedom, and now they held that freedom firmly, refusing to let it slip. The quiet scene of humans repairing their ships and cities, helping each other stand after hard-fought battles, resonated deeply across the stars. An old Lithorian council member, once dismissive of humanity, watched a recording of the humans at work, marveling at the grit and unity they displayed. He realized, with a pang of regret, that in underestimating this small, unassuming species, the Council had set in motion a shift that would alter the balance of the galaxy forever. In humanity, he saw not just defiance, but hope, determination, and the promise of a future free from tyranny. It was a lesson he would carry, and a legacy that the galaxy would not soon forget.